Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to the webinar from the Emerging Multinationals Research Network. That's Association of Scholars from Universidad of Sao Paulo, Universidad de San Andrés, Universidad de los Andes in Colombia, and Tec de Monterrey in Mexico. We have been working for 5 years doing research on emerging markets. We are publishing a book and organizing different presentations and collaborations. And right now, with the pandemic, we launched these webinars, these very successful webinars, thanks to the push from Universidad de los Andes. Dean Andonova pushed all of us, and we are very happy. Today is special because the webinar is Brazil. Brazil in the news, second country in the world with most cases of COVID. But thanks to the strength, leadership, and the extreme love for their country of many Brazilians, and we have two women here. We have Patricia Ellen, who is a politician now after being many years in consulting, trying to do their very best to push the country to the next phase. And also another woman has been working in many different organizations, Gianna Sagazio, Director of Innovation at the Brazilian Confederation of Industries. We need to bring, as I was saying, Brazil out of the pandemic, not out of the pandemic. We have to look 5 years from now and invest in innovation. That will be the only way for Brazil to move forward, a country that is very rich and deserves, because of Brazilians and because of the role of the country. The country needs to get out of the crisis, not only because of Brazil, but because of the world. The world needs Brazil to be in a next phase that has been the right one. So my name is Lourdes Casanova. I'm very happy to be part of this network, and I'm director of the Emerging Markets Institute at Cornell University. And again, another big leader that we have, and I'll pass the word to him, is the Dean of the School of Management at the University of Sao Paulo, doing more than is deserved for the position, going the extra mile to move the university and the business school education in Brazil and for the world. Thank you very much, Moacir. The floor is yours.
Moacir, you are in mute.
Yes, thank you very much, Lourdes, for introducing our guest. I am Moacir Miranda Oliveira Jr., full professor and head of the Business Administration Department at the University of São Paulo. I also want to introduce Fernanda Caim, professor of International Business and Innovation at Centro Universidade da FEI, and together we will moderate the present seminar on shaping our post-COVID future. The coronavirus pandemic has brought drastic challenges and disruption to business and countries. The International Monetary Fund suggests that COVID-19 recession will be the most extreme global economic crisis since the Great Depression, and that will be more severe than the 2008 crisis. Experts are pointing innovation as the key to limiting the damage of the crisis. This includes innovation in how traditional companies deliver value to society, how some innovative digital platforms are experiencing exponential growth overnight, and also, perhaps most important, how companies and governments are investing and developing treatments and possible new vaccines to limit the spread of COVID-19. The pandemic crisis has not affected all business and countries equally, and we are here today to discuss what innovation can bring to our future post-COVID-19. Innovations of new products, new treatments, new vaccine, new business models, or even new government policies and innovative ways to open up the economies. We are delighted to have today with us authorities of innovation. Soumitra Dutta, Professor of Management and former founding Dean at S.C. Johnson College of Business, Cornell University, editor and author of the Global Innovation Index. Patricia Ellen, Secretary of Economic Development, Science, Technology, and Labor of the State of São Paulo. Patricia is also a former undergraduate student of the University of São Paulo. And I want to congratulate Patricia for her protagonism in the fight against the COVID-19 in the state of São Paulo. And Gianna Sagazio, an old friend, Innovation Director, National Confederation of Industry in Brazil, and Superintendent CEO of Evaldo Lodi Institute. Thank you very much to all for taking time to join us today. The format of today's webinar will be as follows. Each of our three distinguished panelists will speak for about 10 minutes. When they have concluded speaking, Fernanda Cain will take over and open the question sessions. And I ask the participants to use the chat function to submit your questions. I will introduce our first speaker, Soumitra Dutta, who joined us from Ithaca, New York. Soumitra Dutta is currently a professor of management and former founding dean of S.C. Johnson College of Business at Cornell University. He's the founder of the Global Innovation Index, published by the World Intellectual Property Organization, and was the co-editor of the Global Information Technology Report, published by the World Economic Forum, two influential reports in technology and innovation policy. He's also the founder and president of Portland's Institute, a non-partisan, non-profit research and education institution based in Washington, D.C. In addition, he is a member of the advisory boards of several schools, including Indian Institute of Technology, New Delhi, HEC Montreal, ESADE Barcelona, Porto Business School, Portugal, ESCP Paris. Dutta was the co-chair of the World Economic Forum's Global Future Council on Innovation Ecosystem. He is also the chief academic advisor to the Artificial Intelligence Forum of the Confederation of Indian Industry. Please, Soumitra, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dean Moasir, and good afternoon, good evening to everyone who is listening to this webcast. First of all, I'd like to begin by wishing you all, including my panel members, a very healthy present, and I certainly hope that all your family members are healthy and safe. We are living in very unusual times, so I think we all have to make sure that not only we are healthy, but people who matter to us also are keeping safe and healthy. Now, for the last 2 months, I have been involved in a very interesting research project. So one of my roles is I'm the chair of a global network of business schools called the Global Business School Network. It runs out of Washington, D.C. And we were faced with the question that what will the world look like post-COVID? As business school deans are today struggling to deal with the current challenges of moving classes online, at the same time, they have to think about the future. What will happen in education, what will happen to students' expectations in the months and years ahead. And there's a lot of uncertainty about these issues. So what we decided to do was we decided to interview about 30 business school deans around the world and also business CEOs from around the world, and to collect the views about what their views about the future. We are in the middle of the project, and we are releasing the results in incremental fashion as we go along. If some of you are more interested in looking at details, please do visit gbsn.org. So gbsn.org. And that site has some videotapes and some more details of the interviews we're conducting. But what I thought I'll do today is share with you some of the high-level messages that we are finding. What are some common themes across the different leaders from business schools and businesses that we are finding in response to the question about what will the world look like? We often begin with a very simple question, asking them, do you think this is a tipping point? Do you think the world in the future will be very different from what we have seen in the past? And I can tell you unanimously, every single person we have interviewed has said yes. No one has said no. So in a sense, there's unanimity amongst the group of people we have interviewed that they all feel that this is a definite threshold of major change. Of course, there are some different viewpoints in the degrees of change, but it is a point of major change. And that's one reason why I'm very happy that we are having the discussion, because a discussion like this is one way in which we can stimulate our thinking about the future. Now, I wanted to mention 3 points, 2 of which are linked more technology and 1 more to general our own personal situation. So the first point I wanted to mention is that we have seen a dramatic acceleration of digitalization in the last 3 months. I mean, things have happened which no one ever thought would happen easily. Entire universities moving their full curriculum online, large white-collar work organizations shutting down and essentially moving entirely the work to remote working environments. And that essentially has proven to us that we have this enormous capacity for innovation inside organizations. We didn't know that we could actually move our teaching online in a matter of a couple of weeks. If you'd asked people last semester, even last December, do you think university could have moved all its teaching online? The answer would be no. There's so many faculty members who'd be against it, who do not believe in it. But guess what? It did happen all over the world. And this is incredibly powerful. So I think we should be proud about the power of innovation, which lies sometimes just to be discovered within us. At the same time, there are concerns right now about what will happen to innovation going forward. Now, I can tell you, for example, that at universities, a lot of people think that, well, let's just get over this online teaching period and we'll go back to our regular classroom teaching. And there is a sort of implicit assumption that the future will be sort of like what we had in the past, maybe a little bit more online teaching. And a similar assumption is perhaps being played out in many companies in different formats. But the reality, as I said, is probably going to be very different. And it's a good time for us now to question and rethink some basic assumptions about the future. Do we actually need, for example, to have a 4-year college degree? Do we have to actually have people coming and congregating for an executive program in one location? Do we need to have so many congresses and conferences being run by companies? And there are many other questions one can ask, but I think this is a good time to question what we have taken as a granted and to, in fact, rethink the future. More generally, if you think about the last crisis that we had, the last crisis was only about 10 years ago in 2008. And I would say that for much of history, the amount of investments in innovation has roughly paralleled the GDP growth. So as GDP grows, innovation grows, GDP declines, innovation declines. But what is interesting is the data from the Global Innovation Index shows that in the last 10 years, there has been a divergence between the GDP growth rates and innovation investments. What is interesting is that after 2008 crisis, most countries did not experience a decrease in innovation. Yes, it is true that governments decrease the spend in innovation, but in most cases, the private sector more than filled in the gap. They actually increased the investment in innovation dramatically. So what you see as a result is total innovation spend, both government and private sector, actually has been increasing at a faster rate than GDP growth over the last 10 years. It's an interesting question to know whether this will happen in the future, because the question is, if innovation spend keeps on increasing in the future, some countries, some companies are going to innovate at a faster rate, and the ones which do not do so are going to get left behind even further. So I think it's an interesting question that a lot of innovation is going to probably happen. It's a good time to be innovating in that area. Let me say the second point. The second point is about economics versus humanity. I think a lot of the focus in history today has been on economics, and the way we've organized the society, the way we organize the business is all around largely efficiency, production, and looking at how can we basically be more productive. Productivity has been the mantra defining how we've organized ourselves, organized the businesses, and thought of society in general. And we have always assumed that higher productivity is good for people. That's the assumption we have made. And now suddenly this post-COVID or COVID crisis has forced us to question that and has put the simple question of humanity in front of us. Is it a question of not just only lives versus livelihood, but okay, what is more important? And I think that's where people realize right now that maybe livelihood, maybe humanity is actually more important. Whom do we decide are the essential workers? Today, you see that a lot of the people, essential workers, are not necessarily the highest paid work in society. They are in fact the ones putting their lives on the frontier for us to be able to live and work from homes, but they are not the ones that we as society, we as companies value the most or pay the highest salaries to. So there's a very interesting question raised out here in terms of how do we build a system that is putting in front humanity and people values more than just economics. And this is especially true if you look at the new millennials. The new millennials, who are hit by 2 or 3 crises, hit by the crisis 10 years ago, and now in the 30s, hit once again with another crisis. You think about their lives and their possibilities, it's really in something which perhaps is very different from those who are a little older have probably experienced. So I think this whole question about economics versus humanity is very important. And now what we are finding is that people are reverting to human values in some innate manner. You're finding examples of people saying that, well, look, I've never spent so much time with my wife. I never spent so much time with my children. And I'm discovering aspects about my own family I did not know before. So I think there is a unique chance for us to not just lose this moment. This 2 or 3 months when we have been forced to stay at home has forced us to connect with ourselves, connect with the family members in a much more deeper manner than what we did before. And I think this is all part of the general move towards humanity and human values becoming more important. The last point, very briefly, is about leadership. When we did the interviews, we often asked leaders, okay, as a result of this COVID crisis, what have you changed for yourself? So fine, the world is changing, a lot of things changing, but how have you actually changed yourself? And the answers were, of course, multiple, but if I had to highlight 2 or 3 key things that they mentioned. One was they mentioned the importance of working with the team. Every leader said, I could not go through the crisis alone. I needed a strong team with me to support me as we go through the crisis. The team became very important. And the ability to build a common agenda with the team became extremely important. And that was possible because they really believed in open, transparent communication. So we've heard about communication being important in crises, but I think today's environment, the importance of communication has become extremely high. I'm sure Dean Moasi realizes that as he leads a business school now in the USP. But I think leaders feel that now they need to have the support of a strong team. To get the support, they need to be, in fact, transparent, open. And strong leadership doesn't necessarily mean having all the right answers yourself. Strong leadership means essentially being open about what you know, what you don't know, and being able to work with people around you to find the right answers. And of course, the last thing that I would say the leaders said was very important was to look after their own health. Because if you collapse, you can't actually do anything much useful. So they also stress the importance of balancing their own mental health, physical health, as looked at this entire leadership sort of journey. So let me stop out there and hand the floor back to Moasi. But I think, I shared with you what I thought are 3 important takeaways from our interviews that we're conducting right now. Moasi, over to you.
Thank you very much, Soumitra, for your presentation. I kindly ask the audience to send the question through YouTube, and we'll try to answer all at the end. I'll now give the floor to Patricia Ellen. Patricia joined us from São Paulo, Brazil. Currently, she is the Secretary of Economic Development, Science, Technology, and Labor of the state of São Paulo. Patricia has been a young global leader since 2016 of the World Economic Forum, in recognition for her achievements on digital innovation, education, and economic development in government. She also led his leadership and digital innovation at the Master of Public Management program of the Center for Public Leadership. She holds both an MPA from Harvard Kennedy School and an MBA from INSEAD. Patricia was the CEO of Optimum Brazil until 2018, and he previously worked as a partner at McKinsey Company for nearly 18 years. Focused on public sector challenges, led projects in education, health, economic development, with a special focus on digital government innovation. She's a co-founder of Movimento Agora, which seeks to modernize public policy provision and management by promoting social engagement to build a more human and sustainable country. Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you, Professor Moacir. I'll take my mask off because I had people with me, in respect to them, I was keeping the mask on, but now I'm by myself, so I can be here without a mask. But it's an honor to be here with you, especially with like so familiar faces. Professor Lourdes, who was my professor at INSEAD, and you, Professor Moacir, I was a student at FAIR as well. Gianna, who is a very good friend. So it's really a pleasure to be with you. And it's an honor also to be here with Soumitra Dutta and all the others who are with us today. I know we will be talking about, what are expectations and aspirations for what we'll be doing after COVID. But I'll take the opportunity to talk a little bit also about what we are doing now, because I think that what we are doing now will be also very important to give us room to work on what we could be doing in the future. I will share, I think there is a presentation that I sent that was being shared with you. I don't know if I should be sharing from here or if someone is sharing there.
Yes, I received it. Do you prefer to share yourself?
Up to you. Whatever.
Better because you can control better.
Okay, so I will share it from here. 1 second. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes, we can see.
Perfect. So let me just put it in presentation format. Yeah, there we go. All right. So we were just talking about this today. 2 days ago, we announced our conscious reopening plan. How we will be doing that in the following weeks and months. One challenge that we have here, unlike other places, we are not putting exact dates to each one of the changes in phases, but more than that, goals that we need to achieve to change to the next phase. And per se, it's a new way to work, when you are working with the society and with so many different business sectors. What you see here, since we had our first case in Brazil, in São Paulo and in Brazil in last February, we launched the Contingency Center with a list of 16 and now 18 epidemiologists. It's a consultative body that's been serving the government since then. We also took many different measures early on, like temporary closing movies, theaters, museums, libraries, and many others, until March 23rd, when we announced our first official social distance outset. We need to remember that compared to what happened in the world, we never had a lockdown in our state. It's a different type of social distance measure in which we closed many activities to reduce social contact in a way that we had like isolation that achieved almost 70% at some points in our states, in different measures, but in our official measure, we were having isolation that was between 55 and 60%. Here you can see how our curves are now, the COVID curves for Brazil and São Paulo. You see that São Paulo starts to detach from Brazil, and that started happening more than a month ago. We were the epicenter, but unfortunately, Brazil keeps growing quite fast. And as I said, we never had like a lockdown at the federal level, neither any type of announcement in terms of social distance from the federal government. All the states had to act on their own. In many matters, actually, the federal, the health minister recommended social distancing, but the president gave many speeches recommending people to go to work. So that created an additional challenge to our implementation of the social distancing measures in our states. But despite that, the results are very good to the extent that today Brazil keeps growing, São Paulo is growing, but our rate of transmission is much lower now. In the States, the average, I saw the last numbers, is around 1.3 to 1.5, but in many regions of the state, we are going down around 1, and in other regions, we still have like a rate of transmission around 1.6, 1.7. But in the country, the number is higher. And an example, even yesterday that we had a bad day in the States, the country was much worse. And now the number that you see here, we are less than 20% of the total cases in the country. And that changing like in less than 2 days, just because the country keeps growing so much faster. Here, I think that we are celebrating with cautious, but celebrating is that, if we hadn't done the social distance measures, that would mean that basing on the same methodologies, we would have 10 times more cases in our state. So now we have officially around 85,000 cases in the state, confirmed cases, but that means that without the social distancing, we would have almost 1 million cases, following the same criteria that we follow to project our cases. You see that the adherence of our curve to the projected scenarios is being quite good. And the best consequence of the social distancing is that we saved 65,000 lives in our state. And that means a lot to what we want to do post-COVID. Many people ask me if I'm the Secretary for Economic Development, Science and Technology, if that means that, we are somehow harming the economy. What we are saying that the best way to have a sustainable growth, economic growth and recovery is now saving lives and giving people conditions to get access to good treatment, because without a cure, this is the best way for us to really get back on track in the economy as well. And also we say that our challenge here is not COVID, and it's not the social distancing, is COVID. COVID is the challenge that the whole world is facing. We have global recession, and we can compare some sectors, and I'll show to you in a minute. Even without social distancing rules, the sectors are in deep recession. I'll just speed up a little bit to go directly to where we are today. We launched 2 days ago, as I said, this conscious reopening plan, in which we are now classifying different regions of our state in different stages of the crisis. Until Wednesday, all the state was in maximum alert, meaning that everyone was under the same rules for social distancing. From Monday onwards, we will have different rules for different regions. The regions are organized based on our healthcare system. The criteria is health, because we are still controlling the pandemic. So now we have states in 3 different phases. Phase 1, maximum alert, region, Phase 2, control. And phase 3, it's not relaxation, is starting the opening. And then phase green, partial opening. And then the blue, which is our new normal, but in our case, we are calling controlled normal, because there is not such a thing as normal until we have a cure or a vaccine. The criteria that we are using is similar to everything that's been done in the world: health system capacity and epidemics evolution. We have also very strict rules, and this is different from what's being done in other regions. Many regions just said, these sectors will open from that day onwards, this sector is going to open from that day onwards. We are not doing that. We are explaining that we still need to control the number of people in the streets. So what we are doing each phase, we start a reopening of the sectors, but with a very strict control of the number of people that will be accessing those services. So in phase 2, we have 20% of the original traditional flow. On phase 3, it goes up to 40%. On phase 4, it goes up to 60%. Then in phase 5, we open at the normal flow, but still with all the protocols, hygiene and protection protocols. In our state, it's obliged, it's mandatory to use masks. And today we have a very high adherence from the population. In public transportation, the usage is 100%. And in São Paulo capital, the usage is 95%. Given that we are talking about a system with 45 million people, and in the capital 20 million people, it's one of the highest usage of masks that we found around the world. And we believe that this is very relevant if we want to start moving to a reopening. But a point of cautious here, most of us are still in alert or in control. That means that the epidemic is very present and that we need to take a lot of care. Moving towards what we'll be doing in the future, we organized the São Paulo plan post-COVID in 3 phases. We have the response phase, which goes from 3 to 6 months. Today we are in month 3. We have afterwards the recovery phase that's gonna go from 6 to 12 months. And finally, we have the support phase, which goes from 12 to 24 months. So the governor officially announced today that we'll be working in a plan for 21, 22, and starting from scratch. We had a strategic plan with goals. Last year, we delivered a growth of 3% in GDP, even though the country grew only 1%. So most of the growth that the country had came from São Paulo. And now we will have to restart again. We believe that in our 4 pillars, credit to micro entrepreneurs is going to be critical, because they need now this help, especially if we work in capital, to survive through this final stage of the crisis and then be able to get back on track. The second pillar was already mentioned by Professor Soumitra Dutta, has a lot to do with the new ways of learning. I would highlight one specific one that's under my responsibility. Here in the state, we have the biggest professional training center in Latin America. It's called Centro Paula Souza, with vocational training covering more than 300,000 students. And our mandate was triple the size of Centro Paula Souza. What we are doing this year, given COVID, we started the biggest remote vocational training plan. We are doing that now. We will keep working and get back to our presential courses, but we believe that this arm that was created now for our survival, to support the students who are at home, can be a key lever for the future to give a second diploma certification to our students and work on upskilling and reskilling of the population. We know that these 2 strategies were being discussed and very much in vogue in the last 2 years. Now they will be the key strategy and maybe a good hope for emerging countries. We have a good chance now to really leapfrog if we do it well and give a chance to our students to go into vocational training. Third, innovation, which is under my responsibility as well with my science and technology arm. We coordinate all the state universities. They are autonomous, but we work together, University of São Paulo, University of Campinas, and University and UNESP. And these 3 universities are the main universities that we have in Brazil. And we are working together with FAPESP, our Foundation for Research, and it's the biggest research institution in Brazil that's actually today helping the whole country. Half of our projects are projects from other states. And just to end here, innovation and entrepreneurship will be key to us in the next few years. And São Paulo is the innovation hub to Latin America, and we aim to strengthen this lever, because last year we are 3rd place in unicorn news in the world, behind only the US and China. And even now, we are also in charge of the body that is in charge of the opening of new businesses. We had in March 16,000 new businesses, and in April more than 5,000. So people are opening business. Brazilians are very entrepreneur, very creative, and it's our role now to give support and give room to this entrepreneurial activity, because the market will be very liquid, and we are working now on this plan to really foster these three main levers. We believe that there is a great opportunity for us to get restarted again. It's not going to be easy, as you saw. It's not a speed competition, it's a marathon, and we are talking about a plan for the next 2 to 3 years. I'll stop here. Thanks a lot.
Patricia, thank you very, very much. As a Brazilian citizen living in the state of São Paulo, I thank you very much and the state of São Paulo government for taking care of us. Now, I will give floor to Gianna Sagazio, who joined us from Brasília city, at the capital of Brazil. Gianna Sagazio is the Innovation Director of the National Confederation of Industry in the country and the CEO of IEL, Institute of Law, in charge of the executive coordination of the entrepreneurial mobilization for innovation, the largest mobilization for innovation at industry level in Brazil. And is also responsible for policy issues for innovation and management innovation. She was the representative of the Brazilian National Development Bank in the Brazilian Industrial Policy and Science Committee, and she coordinated also as a Brazilian National Development Bank, the Brazil-United States Initiative for Innovation, along with the Brazilian Agency for Industrial Development, the Competitive Brazil Movement, and the U.S. Competitiveness Council, which launched the platform Brazil United States Innovation. She worked for over 20 years at the United Nations on issues related to economic development and at the Dom Cabral Foundation with themes related to entrepreneurial and Brazilian competitiveness. She has a master's degree in economic development from Catholic University of Brasilia and certified by Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania in strategy and innovation. Thank you, Gianna, for joining us.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Lourdes for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here with so many good friends and also very good friends of Brazil. This is the most important. So I will talk a little about science, technology, innovation in this period of pandemic. The public health crisis caused by COVID-19 made the relevance of science, technology, and innovation a priority so that societies can respond to pandemics and other threats. Quickly, the Brazilian community of science, technology, and innovation, including a wide range of universities, research institutions, and companies, mobilized and has been actively contributing to the search for solutions. This prompt response is the result of decades of training people and the continued practice of basic research and technological development. It is a privilege for Brazil, for example, to have the Oswaldo Cruz Foundation, Fiocruz, and the Butantan Institute, institutions qualified to develop vaccines on the frontier of world innovations. Without them, the country would not have been able to face, since the end of the 19th century, epidemics and endemics such as bubonic plague, tuberculosis, yellow fever, Chagas disease, dengue, and the Zika virus, and would remain unmoved. As a proportion of GDP, companies' investment in R&D fell from 81 billion reais in 2014 to 67 billion in 2017. Science, technology, and innovation has also been instrumental in the development of relevant economic sectors. As an example, beyond the expansion of competitive soy in the Cerrado regions to scientific research at the Brazilian Agriculture Research Enterprise, Embrapa, The training accumulated at the Aerospace Technological Center, CTA, and the Aeronautical Technological Institute made EMRN's success possible. Exploration of the oil in deep and ultra-deep waters would not be possible without the contribution of SAMPs of Petrobras. On the other hand, in the business sphere, research and development began to take shape with consistency and awareness, especially in industry, through initiatives such as the Entrepreneurial Mobilization for Innovation, created by the National Confederation of Industry 12 years ago, with the objective of increasing the participation of the private sector in national investment in science, technology, and innovation. In this perspective, the release by IBGE, it's our official institute of research, last April, of the results of the industrial research on technological innovation for the period of 2015-2017 period, sounded like an alert. Under a strong recession and a significant drop in investments in this period, there was a substantial decline in the rate of innovation in Brazil. Between 2014 and 2017, the percentage of innovative companies fell from 36% to 33.6%. As a proportion of the gross domestic product, the investment in R&D of the companies in the sample decreased from 0.58% to 0.5%. It means 81 billion reais in 2014 to 67 billion in 2017. It is important to note that currently there was a strong contraction of public support in the area of science, technology, and innovation. According to the IPEA, there is a think tank here of the Brazilian government in Brasilia. A decisive factor in reducing the R&D to the ratio between R&D and GDP between 2014 and 2017 was the sharp decline in public support for research and development in companies. The institution points out that the percentage of innovative companies that received some public support fell from 39.9% in 2014 to 26.2% in 2017. The compression of the federal budget allocated to science, technology, and innovation area in the last 3 years is alarming. Also worrying in the significant retraction of the National Science and Technology Fund, the fall in the subsidy to innovation by FINEP, a public agency that finances studies and innovation projects in the country, the strong contraction of grants from CNPq, the National Council for Scientific and Technological Development, and announced the intention to incisively cut Petrobras R&D projects. Even more serious, considering the worsening of fiscal conditions due to the COVID-19 pandemic, is the perspective of the decline in national investments in science, technology, and innovation that continues to happen. This is unacceptable, as it puts at risk not only our potential for technological development, but also national sovereignty. For example, the disarticulation in recent years of the industrial health complex with a setback of the medical and hospital equipment industry has significantly increased the dependence of the sector of imports of inputs and equipment. The need to import pulmonary ventilators, an essential item for the treatment of infected with COVID-19, as well as the diversion of orders by unfair competitors, is just the most recent example. Had it not been for the presence of two small surviving industries capable of supplying 11,000 new fans, the country would be totally at the mercy of this dependence. It is no secret that despite fiscal restrictions, advanced industrial economies and some emerging economies are engaged in a real race for the opportunities that will come from the fourth industrial revolution. Political leaders, governments, and societies in these countries understand that investments in science, technology, and innovation are priority and very important for the future of the country due to the high social and economic return they provide. In this context, unfortunately, Brazil runs the risk of being even more delayed in relation to exponential and/or disruptive technologies. I refer to the innovation driving by increasing connectivity, 5G, the impact of high computing capacity and analysis of large masses of data, artificial intelligence, and advanced automation. This digital revolution, in turn, instrumentalizes the rapid advance of nanotechnologies and genetic biotechnologies. With an eye on the future, the Brazilian community of science, technology, and innovation has been struggling to achieve frontier projects, as exemplified, among others, by the cases of Sirius, Laboratory of Light of the National Research Center for Energy and Materials, the development of small satellites, and specific projects in the areas of genetics and bioeconomics. The great challenges that lie ahead, such as the comprehensive digitalization of the societies, advanced manufacturing, climate change, health and quality of life in the face of new pandemics, require robust and long-term strategies, policies. So, without a profound change in understanding in government and society about the strategic nature of innovation and research and development, national sovereignty will be at risk. We need to act quickly and urgently before it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you, Gianna. We share your concerns, but I'm not going to comment anything. I kindly ask Fernanda started the session questions from the audience. Fernanda, it's with you.
Okay, thank you, Moacir, and thank you to our three panelists for the insightful presentations. I will go straight to the questions because we have just a few minutes. So I would like to start with a question about the global race for the vaccine development for this virus. Who sent the question was Lisette Bolanhos. She sent a question on YouTube and the rest of the question on my WhatsApp. social tests. A group of researchers from the medical school at the University of São Paulo is developing a potential vaccine against COVID-19. Different from the efforts in other countries, these Brazilian scientists are using a synthetic protein that could induce a better immune response in the body, and they do not use any DNA material from the virus. And that is innovative in the development of a vaccine. So, Professor Soumitra, in a global perspective, how do you see this effort of pharmaceutical innovation coming from an emerging market like Brazil? These pharmaceutical innovations are extremely expensive and lots of projects don't come true in the market. And Patricia, could you please comment how the state of São Paulo is supporting this vaccine initiative in the medical school at USP? That's the first question. Or Professor Soumitra and Patricia.
Thank you, Fernanda. I'll be brief in my response. I think we have seen increasing collaboration across scientists around the world. That's, I think, very good in the search for a vaccine. Second, yes, pharma companies have a general challenge in terms of trying to find control costs and discovery, but they're increasingly partnering with smaller companies or partnering with university labs to search for new molecules or drugs. I think this example of the small group in USP forming a vaccine is, I think, a good example of innovation happening outside traditional pharma companies. And third, why not? I think a lot of innovations in pharma are coming from emerging markets, partly because regulations sometimes are a little bit more favorable for rapid experimentation. And you're seeing good examples coming from India, from Brazil, from Israel, and other markets.
On my end here, on the specific project, I would like to get more details on which project is this. There are many projects on vaccines in Brazil, and especially in São Paulo. But I will give you a broader answer because it's very relevant to us in the state of São Paulo. The scenario that Gianna described is very sad, and it's true. But in the state of São Paulo, we don't have the same situation. In the government, we kept the commitment to invest in science, technology, innovation. So the proportion of the budget that we had allocated to science and technology remained the same. Actually, when we took power the first year, we increased the budget to FAPESP, our Research and Innovation Foundation, because they had a decrease in budget last minute in December 2018, and we brought it back in January 2019. So for us, it's a state that really believes in science, so we keep investing. We also have Butantan Institute linked to our university and to the government. Butantan Institute is a worldwide reference in vaccines creation, and we launched in FAPESP a research line. In total was 30 million reais only dedicated to COVID, 20 million for researchers. Any researcher who is doing a project linked to FAPESP can get an additional support grant to direct any type of effort to COVID. They don't need to sign up again to a new project. So it's 20 million dedicated to that. Another 10 million to companies that have less than 25 employers. They can have access to that grant as well. And we are launching now a new fund of another 100 million reais to solve COVID-related challenges in the government. And that is a public-private partnership because big companies come together with researchers and startups to solve problems as well. On the vaccine specifically, we also know that AstraZeneca is one that's most advanced, that's in phase 3. We also need researchers studying ways to produce the vaccines here. And in our case, we are working to invest in the researchers, but also in making sure that the sooner we have a vaccine, we start producing in Brazil, because we cannot get a delay of 6 to 12 months, because that happens, between the vaccine creation and the licensing to Brazil. So as another example to the respirators, which was another challenge for us, we are tracking 28 respirator projects. And we also have one in USP that is starting production now. So as a government official now, my role is to foster innovation on one side, but make sure that we find a solution for the public policy the sooner that we can. So we need to work on both sides.
Okay, so in this line of a vaccine, Natalia Correa asks to Gianna, are the generic companies in Brazil prepared to produce right away the new vaccine for the coronavirus? If the new vaccine has no patent, is exactly what Patricia was commenting right before. And how CNE is helping the Brazilian pharma companies in this moment.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. So CNI, we are an industrial system, and we have other institutions that are linked to CNI. We have SESI, SENAI, and YEL. SENAI is the institution of the industrial system that provides training for the workers of the whole country. At SENAI, we have around more than 90 institutions of technology and innovation all over Brazil. So SENAI is working now in partnership with the companies to provide equipment, ventilators, all the things that are needed to fight against COVID-19. So they are recuperating equipment, they are developing other equipment. So we have a very close partnership with the entrepreneurial sector, with the industries that are focused now to fight against this pandemic. Okay?
Okay, thank you. And we have a question from Sergio Costa. I think Patricia could answer that. With the current devaluation of the Brazilian real, will acquisitions become the major source of foreign investment to Brazil in the first years of post-COVID era?
Well, acquisitions will be one of the options. I don't believe it's going to be the main one, and I hope it's not, because we need to create jobs. So we need to find other sources. The market's going to be liquid, and that's why the governor asked us to create like a strategic plan for 21-22. And our plan is to get back to where we were last year in international roadshows, and especially capturing the funds that we lost at the national level. For example, environmental funds. We are talking now to Norway, the Norway Fund. There is a lot of things that we can do because we keep compliant to all the environmental rules, to the Paris Agreement as one of the examples. That is one of the prerequisites of the funds. So we are right now working on a list of investment funds to work on a roadshow plan for next year and make sure that we attract investment to our country, not only through acquisitions, but especially in infrastructure investments and in opening new businesses here, and businesses that are green businesses. We have a chance now to really leapfrog and go to where we would like to go in terms of green economy, circular economy, creative economy. I know it's hard for us to imagine that now when we are all, literally stuck at home and fighting this virus. But on the other hand, it's been so hard. It's going to be hard anyways. So if we are starting from scratch, we can start now following the right rules, following, things that are closer to where we want to be in 10, 20 years from now.
Okay, last question is already 4. So it's a question from André Teixeira to Professor Soumitra. And he's asking, based on your experience, how countries are learning after COVID-19 to work and live in a much more integrated and smaller world?
Well, I think, unfortunately, the answer is not a very positive one on that front. I wish I could have given you a more optimistic answer. I think global leadership hasn't really been strong. And it's not just a question of in the Americas. I think there are challenges also in Europe that we have witnessed. There are challenges in other parts of the world. And somehow this crisis has reinforced the notion of going for it alone. And increasingly also we hear stories of how we have to be self-independent, and there are lots of voices against global trade and globalization. I only hope that saner minds sort of persevere, and essentially after the crisis decreases in intensity, we come back with better leadership that has more global coordination and global agreements, because right now it doesn't look very good on that front.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to thank you, our panelists, for the questions from the audience. We had so many more questions to ask, but unfortunately we cannot respond to everything in one section. Perhaps we're gonna have other webinars, and I will give the word to Juana Garcia, who is gonna announce our next webinar.
Okay. Thank you, Fernanda, and thank you all. The next webinar will be on the 19th of June. We be hosted by the Business School of Universidade de los Andes in Colombia. We are going to discuss how multilatinas have been reacting and adapting to the post-pandemic crisis and the challenges in international trade, supply chain, and investment. I hope you can join us for that day.
Back to you, Moacir. Thank you.
I thank you all for coming. I think it was a great discussion. I think there are a lot of takeouts for we to think about. And thank you very much, Soumitra, Patricia, and Gianna for the insightful presentation. See you in the next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.